Good morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window in Door, Georgia. A little bit of a later start for us today, but we're right on time for the actual show itself. And let me tell you, it is going to be a good one today. I'm going to talk for a second and get the voice good and going here. Then after that, we're going to be off and running. So many big moments to recap. In fact, it's going to take us a while to do them all. But we're going to try to capture the emotion of the moment as Georgia, in thrilling fashion, found a way to beat Tennessee for a ninth straight time, getting up off the deck to do so, making a bunch of big plays to make it happen. What a day it was to be a Georgia fan on Saturday, and we're going to do the very best we can to relive it in the best possible way over the course of our time together. That includes Jon Stincomb today. It includes getting a chance to hear from Kirby Smart. You'll love what's being said about Kirby Smart here today, and we'll give you a little bit of a taste of what it was like actually on the field once that one came to a close and once Georgia was walking away as a victory over these Vols one more time. So we love it. We're happy to have you with us for it. Going to be a fun one. Going to be a great couple of weeks with Alabama looming. So let's just settle in and enjoy the great feeling of being a Georgia Bulldog and the satisfaction of knowing we don't have to wear that ugly old orange. It feels good to be a dog today. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
You know, one of the things I say a lot is that my job in many ways is narrating the experience of being a Georgia fan as we've gone through this incredible run that Georgia's been on. Let me tell you what I think that means here today. In that, look, I love sitting in this chair. We love talking football. We love analyzing everything as it relates to football. We love getting into the weeds and all the various things that contribute to Georgia's wins and losses. And we're going to do a lot of that here over the course of this week, the next couple of weeks. Of course, we will. That's just what we live for. And yet, I think on this particular day, we tried to do this Saturday night. If you saw our DawgNation post-game show, I hope you were a part of that too. In addition to all of that, there's also something to be said for, before you get into the nuts and bolts of the game and you break it all down, there is something to be said for just feeling the emotion, just feeling the sense of elation and the happiness that Georgia won the game. And yeah, I realize that there's more than just that one sentence that matters. This is a brand new era for college football, in that, let's say that the kick had been made and Georgia would have lost the game. Well, how we feel about Georgia, technically speaking, should be still similar. I think most of us go into the rest of the season saying, man, Georgia got a chance to be a real good team. They're going to maybe lose a game eventually, but they got a chance to be a real good team. Let's say the kick had been made. We will say, oh, well, Georgia lost this game, but they've only got two more, true road games left. And yeah, they can lose this and shake it off and still be good. In other words, our overall analysis of what Georgia is as a team doesn't change very much because a late field goal got missed and what would have been maybe a Georgia loss had the chance to be a Georgia win. The overall analysis is probably not all that different. It's a brand new era for college football. The playoff is expanded. The SEC schedule's never been tougher. And the way we think about Georgia and Georgia's chief competition is, of course, different because all of that. So that's the analysis part. But the feeling is this. Can you believe that Georgia won that? Can you believe that all the times that Georgia had to give it away, or not even to give it away, to have it maybe taken from them or slip away or whatever words you want to use, there were so many times when that game could have just gone differently. And somehow Georgia just wouldn't quit. Just would not quit. Just wouldn't ever tap out. And listen, before you get into any of the other stuff, I just have to pause for a minute to say all of this made me very happy. And I hope it made you as happy as it made me. I hope that you were as beside yourself in celebration as I found myself being on Saturday. Now, exhausted, tired, long day. But the Georgia fans that I was around, the Georgia fans that I saw, there is just this mind-blowing sense of, we just experienced that, and we get to add that game to the list of these other crazy thrillers and all-time great performances that we've seen in recent years. I don't care if you call it, divine providence or dumb luck or something in between. The good fortune that we've all had to see this version of Georgia football in this era. I mean, can you believe this is our life? Can you believe this is what we do? I tell you, I can't stop being happy about it. And sometimes the proper context for all this comes outside the normal boundaries of our little DawgNation bubble here. I thought that, it's one of those things where this weekend, I didn't watch a ton of football other than Georgia, Tennessee, but I listened to a bunch of podcasts because I've driven what feels like 100 hours in the last, day or so. And one of the ones I listened to, Scott Van Pelt, with Stanford Steve. Stanford Steve now, he's on College Game Day. Scott Van Pelt has been the main anchor for SportsCenter for a long time now. They do a podcast together, and I thought those two guys, big college football fans they both are, neither of them Georgia fans, I thought that they probably summed up just how special this moment was and how in this particular moment the Georgia team completely embodied the culture that Kirby Smart has constructed here at Georgia. Maybe no better way to describe this than what two non-Georgia fans said, Stanford Steve and Scott Van Pelt. This is from yesterday. They were as enamored by the Georgia performance as the rest of us were. Here's SVP with Stanford Steve.
I just was impressed with Georgia's ability to absorb not just scoring drives, Steve, but absolute haymakers. And then as the game got late and the scores changing hands, like these incredible you got mossed plays, and it could have broken a lesser team, and it just didn't. It just didn't.
I don't know if another person coaching that Georgia team today wins that game. They embody him like no other.
I agree. And you know what I notice about him is like the games where you see him going absolutely bananas, it's when they're ahead, or it's in games where, like, all I saw from him today in the middle of the storm was calm. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
He projects a calm, and I think that that's really brilliant. The coach goes crazy when he thinks he has to, right? When I've got to do something to motivate my guys. If I project calm, maybe my guys will stay calm. And I thought they certainly did. Because Tennessee gave them plenty of opportunities to just, I'm going to tap. We're good. We got chances down the road. Today's not our day. And they just didn't.
I think the point that Scott makes there at the end is something that can't be missed, is we know that Kirby Smart's this fiery guy. He is the human embodiment of fire, passion, and energy. But it also seems like in the midst of all of that emotion and all of that fever pitch that Smart's able to dial it up, he also knows how to dial it down when he thinks the moment requires that. And maybe on Saturday, that's what it does require. And I listened to some of Smart's radio show on Thursday, and he was talking about how he, listen on that show, he just sort of says whatever it takes to get through the hour. But he was talking about how he didn't think this game was going to be, he thought it was going to go down to the wire. And he thought both teams were going to have their plays and that Tennessee wouldn't quit and Georgia wouldn't quit. And Smart's emotion, certainly, if you watched on the sideline or you saw it, certainly seemed to be befitting of someone who expected that game to be tough, who knows that Tennessee had scored, five straight years, had scored first over Georgia, became a sixth straight year on Saturday, that Georgia would have to respond after Tennessee had some success. Smart knew that, and so therefore he maintained his composure the entire time, which allowed the team to maybe keep its composure too. And when Stanford Steve, which is the other voice you hear there, when he says no other coach other than Kirby Smart could have led his team to a win in that situation, I think we have to consider the very strong possibility that's probably true. And sometimes coaching is the decision that you make, the players you put in the game, the call that you make, and that all matters. But some of it's also just the culture that you cultivate. And there is a culture at Georgia that gives them a chance to win those sorts of games. Kirby Smart talks about books a lot. They made a big deal a couple of years ago about how the mighty fall. That's a famous book written by a guy named Jim Collins. They do the book about the New Zealand rugby team or the Nike culture or whatever else. Georgia almost has its own book club. They make a big deal about books. There's a book that I don't know that Kirby Smart's ever read, but I think he probably should because I think his team, I think they embody this pretty well too. Do you know the writer's name's Nassim Taleb? And he wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. Like, to me, George is the absolute picture of being anti-fragile. In other words, some organizations are fragile that when tough times come, they just completely crumble. And you would think, well, you want to be not fragile. You don't want to crumble. But what Taleb made the point of is, hey, there are also organizations or people or whatever else that in tough times, they become something even stronger in the face of that adversity. And man, that's what I really think that Georgia is. I just think that in the absolute toughest, most challenging moments with a crowd of 100,000+ breathing down your neck. And honestly, I'll say this real quick, and this won't necessarily be popular because people like to rag on Tennessee, and I love doing that too. But wins feel big because the other side makes the game feel big. I'll give a shout out to Tennessee. They make Neyland Stadium feel big. They make the game feel big. They want it bad. I'm not mocking them. They want it bad. And so the fact that they want it so bad, the fact that they make the game feel so big makes the win feel better. Every Georgia fan that attended on Saturday, you can say you don't like Tennessee fans, and individually, many of them have probably given you a reason to feel that way. I get that. I really do. I've been a fan who's attended games myself. I understand what that's all about. But that was SEC on Saturday. That's what makes our league different than the rest. And when you go into the hostile SEC and the other side is doing everything it can to make the environment as big as possible and you still win, honestly, you owe your opponent a debt of gratitude for making the win feel that special. And I thought that Tennessee did a great job of doing that on Saturday. But it is in those conditions that would be, create a fragile state for some organizations that Georgia says, actually, not only do we not crumble, we actually get better in all of this. You credit Kirby Smart for that. And as Scott also said, that in those situations, a lesser team would have been broken. And that I believe is true. And this is where I'll get on a soapbox for just 1 second. We have been here before. I mean, for years now. We even started the show last week by saying this, that once again, here we are, addressing a lackluster performance for Georgia against an Austin Peay. How much does it mean? Doom and gloom going to come out. And listen, I'm not picking fights. I'm not whatever. I honestly don't even really care that much other than to say, how many times are we going to see Georgia rise to the occasion in a challenging situation before we'll at least consider it as a possibility they might do it again, even in the face of sometimes criticism from their own people that yes, Georgia is capable of rising to the occasion and meeting the moment. It doesn't guarantee they're going to do that in every game the rest of the season. Frankly, they'll probably lose eventually to somebody. That's just what college football is now. But Georgia is capable in the face of adversity of rising to the occasion, meeting the moment. And on Saturday, they did it once again. And I'll tell you this, I thought that Kirby Smart had a pretty light touch after the game. He alluded to, he beat around the bush a little bit, a little less direct than maybe sometimes he would be, about those who perhaps did not give Georgia much of a chance to do this. Kirby at least made reference to that with one of his post-game comments. Let's hear Kirby Smart on that.
Well, I think we know who we are. I don't mean this directed at Tennessee, but I told our players, I was like, there's a lot of whistling by the graveyard. A lot of people don't know what that saying means, but there's a lot of whistling by the graveyard, and that ain't who we are. So I'm not saying I don't think Tennessee is. They're physical and they're tough, but there's a lot of outside whistling by the graveyard. A little bit of acting like one thing, but we feel like our team is a certain identity, and we're not going to go down without a fight. We're nowhere near where we need to be. We're a long way from being there, but boy, we got some kids that aren't afraid to fight.
So we're not going to go down without a fight. We got kids who are not afraid of a fight. That is exactly what Georgia showed. And for anybody who doubted that Georgia would bring the fight, play its best version, be the best version of itself playing at Tennessee, anybody who doubted that would happen, I'm sorry, you're just shortchanging Georgia unfairly, because time and time again, they have done that over and over again. We'll get into a moment what the Georgia offense did on Saturday. Obviously, this week we'll talk about the Georgia defense, both the big stops that it got, areas which it needs to improve. We're eventually going to get to all of the analytical points in the game, but I do think it's appropriate to just acknowledge that somehow, some way, before you get into anything else, somehow, some way, Georgia pulled a victory out of the jaws of defeat on Saturday, and it was just really fun to be a part of. And yeah, there's an element of this. It's probably just luck. But who cares? I mean, who cares? It feels good to be a little lucky every now and then. Because here's what I can tell you. You don't beat a program like Tennessee, and they've had ups and downs over the course of this near-decade run for Georgia, but you don't beat a program like Tennessee 9 straight years unless you have some luck go your way. You can't do that. And I can tell you this, as someone who also lived through some bad losing streaks for Georgia, there was some luck involved in some of those too. Think about Tennessee. How many turnovers did Georgia give Tennessee in 1992? We talked about that game on Friday. Robert Edwards gets hurt in 1995. We talked about that on Thursday. Kirby Smart alluded to the luck box Hail Mary in the 2016 game. That in the wins that Tennessee's gotten against Georgia, some of those have been a little lucky. Don't even get me started on DJ being hurt against Florida in 05 or the crazy stuff that happened against Florida in 93 down there near the goal line and all that stuff. Look, anytime it's not going well for you against one of your rivals for an extended period of time, there's probably some luck that's gone against you for that being the case. But nonetheless, like a true gentleman would, Smart did acknowledge that given some of the circumstances of Saturday, maybe you could say that Georgia certainly had plenty of good fortune on its side. Let's hear Kirby Smart one more time.
I feel almost like you have to apologize because I don't think that we should have won that game. I thought they outplayed us in a lot of ways, but that's the way it goes. I mean, I've had one against them about 9 or 10 years ago that certainly went that way. So it comes and goes.
So listen, I get what Kirby Smart's saying there. He says you almost feel like you have to apologize, but I will say this really quickly, and if you're a Tennessee fan, I want you to draw close to the screen here for a moment. I want to speak directly to you, and I'm glad that you're watching today. If you are waiting for me to apologize for maybe getting a little good luck on the missed field goal, if you are then holding your breath in anticipation of that apology, I have some bad news for you. You're about to turn purple, because purple to match the orange, by the way. You're not getting an apology from me. You're not getting an apology from any Georgia fan anywhere about any of this. Because you know why? Because a football game has 10,000 moments. That was but one. And yeah, I was thankful for it. And if that kick goes a few feet to the left, then yeah, Tennessee probably wins this game. But it didn't. And in this particular case, that means all the other plays that Georgia had been making all day long gave Georgia its chance to win the game. And when Smart says, maybe we shouldn't have won, in his mind, we all know what he's thinking. He's thinking about big issues to the right side of the offensive line, a couple of busts defensively, a couple of times which Georgia maybe made it harder than it needed to be. He's thinking about all of that. And y'all, I promise, we will think about all that stuff too. That's what we do. We break this stuff down. We get into the minutia. Of course, we're going to do that. But I tell you, I couldn't start today's show with, let's get into the right tackle and let's get into the and the cornerback and the block. I can't get into that right now. Y'all, I just want to feel it. And it's good to feel things. Honestly, walk into the stadium, big old gut that I have, butterflies in that stomach. It feels good to feel that way. Part of living life is just feeling the emotion of the moment, whatever it is, and that's a different topic for a different day, but that is also just the truth. So you're nervous going into the game because you want your team to win. When your team does win the game, and I don't care how it happens, especially in those circumstances, this may be the game of the year in college football. It's certainly going to be up there. We expected that's going to be ranked pretty high on that list by the end of the season. Georgia pulled it out. Georgia found a way to win. And the emotion of the moment is just pure elation. And I want our show to reflect that here off the top. In fact, I'm going to give you something right now. And this is one of those things, if you're listening podcast or radio, I might encourage you to check out our video today just to see this part of it, because I think we try not to do too much video-centric stuff, but this was video too good not to play. So right there after the Josh McCray overtime touchdown, when Georgia got the win, Cody, camera in hand, just embedded himself in the middle of this Georgia celebration. And I'll tell you this real quick before we play it. You know, one of the things that Kirby Smart, if you go to our DawgNation YouTube page, you can see this. One of the things that Smart said, he was talking about the offensive line with one of his answers, and one of the things that he said is that he said, man, we practiced hard this week. And for Kirby Smart to say that way gives you an idea of how hard it must have been, because Kirby's default position is very hard practices, but if Georgia practiced hard enough that even he said that, then it must have been really hard. Remember the clip we played for you last week of Monroe Freeling of, he said, boy, Kirby likes to dial it up for these SEC games. And he had this kind of like tilted look on his face of, oh, boy, it's been rough. If that's what the practice is like, if that was what the preparation is like, then this is what the celebration should be. So if you really want to feel it, what was it like on the field? Why is it that Georgia fans were happy? And how is it that the Georgia players who put their lives and their health and their bodies on the line on that turf there at Neyland Stadium, this is the celebration befitting this moment. And this is, I think, the perfect embodiment of what should be the mood of all of Dawg Nation today. Great stuff from Georgia players after the game. Take a look at this.
Never lost to Tennessee. 4-0. 4-0. We are there.
A lot of y'all know I'm the corniest person in the world. I can't help it. That's just how I am. If you put a dramatic cinematic score under anything, I sort of get a little emotional about it. But, I mean, and if you're watching, and I was going to say, if you're listening radio podcast, I realize that doesn't translate for you quite as well. You did hear Oscar Delp at the beginning of that saying, 4-0 in my Georgia career. And now you've seen multiple senior classes come through Georgia, all able to say, never lost to Tennessee. Multiple generations even of senior classes can say, never lost to Tennessee. That's what Oscar Delp got to say there. And if you didn't get a chance to see it, you're just listening to it. That's a lot of Georgia players celebrating. That's Kirby Smart hugging his wife, Kirby hugging his son. That's a celebration that's befitting a very big moment. And as Georgia fans, I hope your celebration was just the same. What a day it was for me and many others to be in Neyland Stadium. What a day it was for Dawg Nation to gather together and watch this game and collectively celebrate one more time. Who knows? Who knows what the rest of the season holds? Given what Georgia is, what the rest of the SEC is, what college football is like these days, in all honesty, there may be a loss coming at some point for UGA. That's quite possible. Quite possible. It may be unavoidable. So, if that's true, then what next? Well, you want to then win as many as you can. You want to hold on to as many positive moments as you can get. Georgia got one on Saturday, and me personally, I am very thankful for that. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. So happy to have you with us. And before we get deeper into all this today, and hopefully at some point in time we can show you the pictures, the videos, things like that. Quick turnaround, probably don't have a lot of that ready to go today. But I will tell you, I just was blown away by the experience we had with our Dawg Nation invasion on Saturday. It was an amazing tailgate. The personal feedback I got from just people who were talking to me, I had such a great time. It's one, I think now twice we've done this, just the absolute best event we've done. I just love it. I'm so thankful for those who were there. And honestly, we had an incredible team of folks here behind the scenes for us. Some of the folks who've never really even worked with us before who helped make this an incredible event. Yeah, you see some of the video. sailing there on the Tennessee River. It was just amazing, just an incredible experience. The food was great. We had great DJ on hand. The hospitality was amazing. People loved the swag bag. It was just a really amazing experience. And I am so thankful for everybody who made it possible. To see that part of Knoxville and be a part of the tailgating on the water there, and to really watch the reaction of Tennessee fans as that hallowed tradition is essentially painted red and black and taken over by DawgNation. I'm telling you, man, I was proud of it. And so to everybody here who made the DawgNation invasion possible, I appreciate that. To everybody who attended, so glad to have you there, and I'd love to have you there in the future if you couldn't be there. So I wanted to say that real quick. Also, our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia, thank you so much for making this show possible here today. We obviously appreciate you. Boy, what a great privilege it is to come in here and talk about Georgia football on a Monday. We could not do that with a great sponsor. And our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia, certainly an example of that. We had really, I would say, relatively pleasant fallish type weather last week. You know what that means? It means we're about to get punched in the face with some real hot weather this week, which means your AC's back to working overdrive again. You know what that's all about. So when you're spending big to keep that AC running all day long, don't waste your money by having the cool air escaping out of your house or having it fighting too hard against windows that aren't properly fitted, that are beyond their shelf life, just inefficient in a lot of different ways. Do the upgrade that so many wise and smart homeowners are doing right now. Upgrade to the Pella windows and take advantage of the amazing technology. Windows are one of those things that, because you can't really see them, you see through them, maybe you don't think about them very much, but it's worth thinking about what Pella can do for you and finding out about, what they can do to reduce noise, especially if you live next to a busy street or something like that. Keeping the sounds of trucks and traffic and things like that. I feel like people have gotten bad about honking their horns lately. You don't want to hear all that stuff. The windows are going to reduce noise. They're going to keep cool air that you pay a lot of money for inside the house, what Pella is all about. And they got great savings right now, too. How about 0% APR for 72 months? That's one of the most popular offerings of the year. 0% APR for 72 months. Find out more about this, PellaGA.com/DawgNation. That's PellaGA.com/DawgNation. Or give them a call, 678-638-1429. That's 678-638-1429. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is going beyond. Okay, we got Jon Stinchcomb coming up in a moment. We're going to get to him. Let's quickly, though, go around the DawgHouse, poured today by our friends at Dr. Pepper. By the way, Dr. Pepper, a big part of our DawgNation invasion on Saturday, too. And my guy, Jonathan from Dr. Pepper, has been loving life after this Georgia win, the way we all have been. So that's good stuff. Now, we told you off the top of the show, it's the emotion of the moment. Now let's start getting into the nitty-gritty of the game. And what can you say about Gunner Stockton? I thought that Stockton had a very strong performance for Georgia on Saturday, and I thought it started from the very beginning of the game. Keep in mind, Tennessee gets the ball. Georgia wins the toss, defers. Tennessee marched right down the field. That put a massive spotlight on the Georgia offense to respond to all of that, and that's exactly what they did. Keep in mind, everybody, media, fans, everybody in between have been saying, Gunner Stockton's got to trust whatever to let go of the football and throw it deep downfield. There's the big strike to Colby Young right at the beginning of the game. It sets up Gunner for a rushing touchdown, and it was game on after that for the Georgia offense. Every critic of the offense, and yeah, I know you can talk about the offensive line, and we will. You can talk about what Gunner needs to do better, and we obviously will. The haters will do that job for us. We'll let them do their thing on that. We'll get to it eventually. What we're going to talk about is in hostile conditions on the road, Georgia finds a way to score, 37 in regulation, 40 whatever in total, and get whatever the exact numbers were. You get the point. And find a way to get this win. And I thought that Kirby Smart, in his analysis and evaluation of Gunner Stockton on Saturday evening, I thought he put it perfectly. This is his overall thought about how Gunner played on Saturday.
Just resiliency, man. He's so tough. I mean, he takes shot after shot. I thought he did a good job with the run game. I'm talking about his run game. It saved us on a couple third downs. In the red area, he made a couple runs. That +1 run game can be big for us if he can protect himself. I thought he grew up tonight. He grew up a lot. Like, he stood in there, and the fourth down throw he made was really good, and protection was better. I still want him to trust the pocket and stay in there, but that's who he is. I think we're going to evolve with him where we can scramble and make some really big time plays. He'll keep his eyes downfield when he scrambles.
So, as Kirby said, the throw to London Humphreys on the fourth down, that's a history book play for Georgia. It really is. And you can put it there with some of the great touchdown catches this team has found. But in addition to that, as Kirby said, Gunner Stockton grew up a lot today. It's one thing to start a game in the postseason in a neutral site venue against a non-SEC foe, and I know Georgia came up and get a little short that day. It's another thing to go into this stadium, hostile environment where it's 100-something thousand people breathing down your neck, cheering every time you mess up. That's a very different world. And to get a win in those circumstances is just a very different thing. And this was why Georgia has placed its trust in Gunner Stockton. That's what that's all about. And if you want to know why the team likes him, these cut-ups are all over the internet. You can go find this. Stockton standing there, delivering the football, knowing that he's about to take a shot. And I'm telling you, it's like when Joey Aguilar took the shot from Raylan Wilson, for a while after that, Aguilar was not the same. I mean, it is just a natural human emotion. It does not feel good to get planted. It just doesn't. It just does. And you can't help but think about that for a while after that. Aguilar was not the same quarterback for a little while after Raylan Wilson put him into the turf. But Gunner Stockton, I mean, some of the shots he takes, he almost looks like, like the bad football movies from the 90s when the guy gets tackled and he's, just goes, flying. That's what some of this was. And yet Stockton just got right back up and delivered the ball in the face of true adversity every single time. That's just what he did. And as we just said a moment ago, the big fourth down touchdown goes to London Humphreys. Humphreys had another huge catch, prior to that London Humphreys becomes, maybe not the way it would have been predicted to be for this particular game, becomes a real big hero for Georgia in all of this. And I thought after the game, Kirby Smart gave some interesting praise to him. Man, he came up big because while Gunner made, an on-the-money throw, London still had to make, in this game, a couple of really big catches. It was beautiful to see. Here's Kirby Smart on that after the game.
I hadn't seen it. Like, caught it over his shoulder kind of. I thought the catch he made on the wheel route on the sideline was even harder where he reached out and got it. But I felt like he faded back into that ball and called it. I couldn't tell from where I was if it was bobbled or not. But you're talking about a huge play. Wow. What a great kid. I mean, guys, I've never met a kid as nice as him. I mean, he is just the most polite, best kid. I mean, he had to fumble last week, and he came over to me in the fourth quarter. Was like, Coach, why didn't you, yell at me or cuss me out? And I was like, London, you're just too nice. I was like, I couldn't do it. I know that he plays so hard on special teams. He's from the state. He's playing at Vandy. He's, you ought to hear him in meetings. He's just so intelligent and so hardworking that it could not have happened to a better guy.
Could not have happened to a better guy. I'm so happy to hear that. And honestly, it's a big day for the Georgia receivers and validating for those of us who said during the offseason that Georgia's attempt to improve on offense was about bringing in new wide receiver talent. And you look who came up big for Georgia: Humphreys, former transfer. Colby Young, former transfer. Zachariah Branch, recent transfer. We'll obviously get to Josh McCray at some point, his day as a transfer running back. But Georgia has made a concerted effort to bring players from outside the program in to get better at wide receiver. And on Saturday, it worked. Georgia does not win this game without a massive offensive performance. Incredible game plan by Mike Bobo. Terrific execution by Gunner Stockton. Yes, it wasn't perfect, and yes, we'll get to the offense. I'll get Jon Stinchcomb right here. I promise. We're not going to let John go without breaking down some of that. That's a real discussion that has to be had. But man, oh man, I don't want to do any of that until we appreciate this. Can you believe what we saw on Saturday? An all-time classic Georgia win. And that is around the DawgHouse, Sport Today by Dr. Pepper. And I love being on our DawgNation Invasion Riverboat cruise on Saturday because we had the big and we always have these for our events, the big tubs of Dr. Pepper and the ice is all in there. You can reach down deep. You go to the bottom of that cooler and you pull out your can. And I'll tell you this is really true. A couple of people came to me as I'm drinking my Dr. Pepper. I'm walking around trying to talk to people. And they're like, BA, you really do drink Dr. Pepper? I'm like, yes, I really do drink Dr. Pepper. I said, the thing that is so much fun for me about, the job that I do here, obviously, we are an ad-supported show. I said, but the sponsors we have are folks that I really use and believe in, and I'm fans of. And yeah, I'm the biggest Dr. Pepper fan in the world. I'm thrilled to have them as a part of around the DawgHouse and our DawgNation Invasion and everything else. To me, there's nothing that goes better together than Dr. Pepper college football. That's been true for just about my entire life. It feels like they've been big parts of that. You see their commercials all the time. They're a big part of what we do here. So as you're getting ready for game day coming up a couple of weeks or whatever moments you have going on, let the rich, one-of-a-kind flavor of Dr. Pepper be a part of that with you, because when it comes to DawgNation Daily and Dr. Pepper, it's a pepper thing. Great to have Dr. Pepper as a part of Around the DawgHouse. All right, we got a lot to do. As we said, we'll get to the offensive line stuff. We'll get to the other issues. I promise we'll do all of that. But man, what a win. And what a day for these Georgia Bulldogs who keep finding new ways to entertain us, to amaze us. Saturday was a good one, y'all. We are lucky people. That was a good one. And let's talk to Jon Stinchcomb about that right now here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella, Window and Door of Georgia.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Oh, let us say hello to Jon Stinchcomb. Jon, I'm thrilled to talk to you today. It's just an amazing game, and Georgia had so many opportunities. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. There were many periods during this game where, as I'm writing storylines for our post-game show and things of that nature, I am operating on the assumption that Georgia's probably going to lose. It's the old Larry Munson line of I gave up, you did too. Gave up is not quite the right way I would say it. I certainly came pretty close to conceding it. Let me just say it that way, that, hey, you know what? Almost, you're sort of writing your concession speech in your head as you're going through this. But Georgia just don't quit. Bad grammar, intentional. They just don't quit. And as someone who knows what it feels like to fight in hostile territory as a player yourself, what did you think about it?
I think you can take a lot of pride as a Dawg fan to watch the way Georgia played that game. They took a big punch from Tennessee early, and 21 points out of the gate, not expected from our defense. I mean, obviously, those who have seen Tennessee play know that they are capable of moving the ball down the field and getting it in the end zone, and have done so pretty proficiently these first few weeks of the season. And I think the expectation was that they're going to run out into a buzzsaw of this Georgia defense. And for Georgia to be able to play that type of game where, I think Tennessee at home, chip on their shoulder, ready to prove something, not only to themselves, but to the rest of the conference and the nation, that, it's not just Georgia anymore. They came out with something to prove and played like it. And for Georgia to respond the way they did, for them to not quit, for them to play gritty, it wasn't perfect. Georgia doesn't have perfect in them right now. And for them to still find a way to win, for them to fight the way they did, I think is something to be really proud of as a Dawg fan.
Yeah, the old cliche is tired about playing to the level of your competition. But it does seem like, and this was, a close game, and Georgia did things that contributed to its near loss. I'm not saying it didn't. But if you want to just look at the offense for a moment, Georgia played far better on the road at Tennessee, 100-something thousand people breathing in your face, much better opponent. Tennessee's defense, I think, is pretty good. But Georgia played better against it than it did against Austin Peay. And this is not the first time this has happened. Georgia just seems to be far more ready for challenging moments. Georgia just likes for it to be hard. And if it's too easy at times, to my untrained eye, it seems like Georgia just feels a little disinterested. They like the thought of, well, maybe we can't do this, so we better go out there and show people that we can. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that Georgia so frequently rises to its best, thankful that it does, why does it so frequently rise to its best in what seems like the absolute apex of difficult conditions?
Yeah, I think in the back of their mind that there's this sense of we're going to play in a lot of big games. Like that's what we are made for. That's what we train for. That's why you came to the University of Georgia, is to play in big games. And when you play in some that are lesser, um, I don't know that there's that degree of respect that exists. And every coach on that staff should contest that take from me. I would get it if they do. I would not get it if they don't. If they're like, he's probably right, then something's wrong, because you preach among your locker room among your team that we respect each opponent. We want to give our best, and you want to play to the best of your ability and not down to or up to your opponent. And I appreciate that. With that said, I think you watch and you say, well, the proof is in the pudding, if you will. And there's times that it's pretty evident. And I think Georgia came out, and because of the way they practice, because of the identity of the program, because of how they're led top down, not only with coaches, but players that have been around and been a part of this program and seen what it takes to win those big games, those hotly contested games against a quality opponent. I think that's why you see the performance ratchet up the way that it does. And the game on Saturday, obviously not perfect, obviously plenty to clean up, and you hope for better performances in certain areas moving forward. But at the end of the day, no quit ever. Never did they back down. Never do you see the boneheaded decisions that other teams make when they're down or the back's against the wall. That's a hostile environment. It was even more pressure when you get down early, and when you take a lead and then all of a sudden you lose it again. That's a lot of pressure. And as young as this team is, and much has been made of that, over 50% of the roster is first or second year players. For them to go into a hostile environment that's loud and rambunctious and filled with vitriol heading your way, and to play as composed as they did, I think is a testament to the preparation that they've done. That to go into that scenario, not have the pre-snap penalties, not give away a bunch of freebies, I think it speaks to that mental approach that's been driven home across the board. That we're built for these moments. We're not going to break. That if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to earn it, and that's the way they played the entire game on Saturday.
Okay, so we are now, by my count, 42 minutes into this show. So I feel like I've earned, and it's all been, boy, this felt great. What a great win. I feel like I've earned the right now to move on to something different. I feel like we've done due diligence in praising this game for what it was, and I'm thrilled to be able to do it. And yet I think that you've also got to take care of some of the business here, too, of this offensive line. Yikes. Boy, there weren't a lot of answers on Saturday. On the right tackle side, people who know a lot more than me about stuff like this say that Ernest Green's just hurt more than has been let on. I'm not saying anybody's lying or covering it up or anything like that. I think that Ernest Green wants to be healthy. I think that Georgia wants Ernest Green to be healthy. I don't think Ernest Green's healthy. And I don't, because of that, I think when healthy, Ernest Green's a really good offensive lineman. Now, you know more than I do, but when healthy, I think Ernest Green's a good offensive lineman. I don't think he's healthy. I don't think that he's maybe right now capable of helping Georgia in the current condition he's in. And I think you got to look somewhere else at right tackle until he's healthy. When healthy, he's my guy, and I got no problem saying that. But I don't think he's healthy right now. And beyond that, it's not obvious what you're going to do, Jon. What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, he is not playing real well this season in general, but injury or not, you put yourself out there and you're putting yourself in a position to be critiqued. And he's just not playing good football right now. And hopefully that when you get healthy, you see a better performance. But right now, he's not helping Georgia. He's not helping this offense. And there's a piece of pride that comes in that I should be out there for my team, but there's also a degree of if you're not able to play at a high level, then it also it can be a detriment. And I want to see all of the guys play at their very best and perform well. Right now, Ernest just isn't. He's not playing great football. So
Yeah.
The bad news is we haven't really found someone that has. And we've seen, Saturday rotation of 3 guys at that right tackle position, and that doesn't include last week's starter in John Jackson.
Yeah.
So I think we were.
I didn't even.
You
I
look
didn't
at
even
it
think
and-
about it. I didn't even think about it in those terms. But that's exactly,
Isn't that wild?
That's
Like-
exactly right.
Last week's starter didn't make the top 3 rotation for this week.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I think it just speaks to the fact that they don't have a lot of clear-cut answers. And I think the same holds true for right guard. I think it's affected the efficiency and efficacy of the entire group. That, there's other things that I'm sure Coach Searles and the offensive coaches would like to address that all of a sudden have been pushed down that totem pole of pecking order of what's important. And you look at the play and, my assessment, there's not an easy answer right now. I think Bo Hewley came in the game late, and when he wins, he wins well. And there's times where he just looks a little bit lost. And each guy has their warts, each guy has their shortcomings. And I think that's the struggle right now, is to figure out what's the best combo, who do we have the highest ceiling with, who can we rally around and develop, because I don't think they have a clear-cut answer. And that's pretty evident with the four-man rotation that has come through in only 3 weeks, 3 of which had their turn on Saturday. And, there's other issues exist, but none probably more glaring than that right tackle spot for this entire team.
So let me tell you what I would do, and this is just what we do. We Monday morning quarterback. Here's what I think I would do. I'm gonna let you tell me what you think about this. You mentioned right guard. I actually think that Dontrell Glover, to my eyes anyway, held up okay on that. Now, he's a young guy, freshman, but I thought he held up okay. I think at this point I'm okay with Glover at guard. And I know this is crazy because this is the SEC. If Glover is a capable right guard, and the best I can tell is, to my eyes, seemed like he held up okay. If he's healthy, I think I want Juan Gaston to tackle. And I think that until Ernest Green is healthy again, I think that Hughley would probably be my top backup at right tackle. I just think that Gaston's a better mauler than Hughley probably is. I do think they think that Gaston's one of their 5 best offensive linemen. I don't know how healthy he is. I hope he's healthy enough. Kirby did say yesterday or Saturday they got to get him back, to full health again. But if he is, I might go freshman on the right side of this offensive line and just say that right now they're my 2 best.
What a condemnation of the guys that we have on that roster. And I say that with all due respect. This is an era where these are paid professionals. This is no longer amateur sports. These guys that are a part of this roster are being compensated. And we've got a number of players that have been a part of this program for a few years now that as we're looking at this, you're saying arguably our 2 best, and I'm not disagreeing with you, are folks that haven't been on campus, that have not even had one single season under their belt, but yet have surpassed guys that have been on this roster. And I say that to almost challenge you of like, where are you at? I mean, you're getting paid to be here, and let's call it what it is. If you're a professional in this sport, you need to perform. And so it's a little bit disappointing for us to have guys that have been a part of this program 2, 3, 4 years now, and you can't contribute in a meaningful fashion. Might be time for you to go. And that's sad, but that's what you talk about in professional sports, and that's what this has become. So if you're looking at it from a critical perspective, and in a second I'll put back my Georgia loyalist hat and say, hey, these are our guys and I love them, and I do. But when you're going to analyze this and say a lot of money is getting thrown around, and we've got 15 plus guys in a position group room that many have been a part of it for a while, and you can't contribute, then there needs to be some sort of return. You see guys in the NFL get cut. You see guys get replaced. You see new additions. And, that's the nasty part of the business. Probably not something we want to be talking about after week 3 of the season, of a college season. I get it. But we're now entering a conversation where, maybe our 2 best players are both freshmen. One who we're projecting in a position we haven't even seen him play yet, not at this level. And we've only seen them play in a very limited capacity. So I think the biggest condemnation is on those that have been a part of this program, that have been waiting in the wings, if you will, and are not ready. It's where are you? Where are you in this equation? That the conversation has moved to, maybe we're better served moving a true freshman from a position, the only position we've seen him play in very limited time, to a whole new position in a different place, because he could be better than what we currently have. That's, to me, there's a huge condemnation for the development of those guys. And, again, this has become a paid position. You're a professional in this field. Should be a higher expectation there.
So let me, at the risk of keeping you long, try to squeeze in 2 issues before we go. We certainly praised Gunner Stockton for having a very good game, and I think that he did. And yet, in the midst of a very good game, it also sounds like they want him to hang back in the pocket a little bit more, to give the offensive line a chance to establish a pocket, hard to block if your quarterback's moving around too much. It sounds like, in addition to a lot of things that Gunner Stockton did really well, being a little more, I don't know if you call it still in the pocket, that may be the wrong way to say it, but patient in the pocket, allowing the protection to do what it's supposed to do. It sounds like they do want a little more of that from Gunner Stockton. Is that your sense as well?
I hear that. I watch the film and I go, you stand in that pocket and get crushed. and there's times where, yes, he should work his way up in the pocket. Yes, he should stick with his primary read. Watch the film. I mean, there are free runners in his face that he creates for us. I don't think he's getting enough credit for the fact that he is one tough sucker now. I mean, there's times his pass to Lawson, his pass to Colby Young that's made social media with that little clip. That little clip is a microcosm of what you see time and time again with him either moving the pocket and creating opportunities, and maybe he doesn't make the best decision that's possible. You know what's easy to do is to sit back and say, oh, I wish you should. Yeah, well, I wish they would, and it'd make my job a heck of a lot easier. So, yes, in an ideal world, he would move in the pocket a little more and he'd keep his eyes downfield. And that's what we're talking about. I'd love to be able to get to that piece of the development of this offense where that becomes the issue. Even when we were talking about, for those that were complaining about the Austin Peay game, you don't go broke making a profit. And his mistakes, if you will, were still forward moving. It wasn't egregious turnovers. How many of you look across the league and there's almost a sense of entitlement that, we're saying, and this is good, I love it, we want to move from good to great. And right now he's making good decisions and we'd love for him to make great decisions. But there's got to be an appreciation for, he doesn't turn the ball over. He gets us out of some really sticky crap where unblocked players are running free and they're in his face, and he's still able to get us in a good situation. So I think there needs to be a little appreciation for what he's done. Now, I understand what you're talking about is the coaches saying, hey, for this player, here's how he can get better. And that's the way it should be. Always. I mean, the football world is one where how can you do this better? And for Gunner, he can do those things better. From a fan, you sit back and you say, thank you. Thank you that for most of the quarterbacks that we've had, if they're in those same shoes, I'm not sure that they get out of the pocket. I'm not sure that they are able to create and extend drives the way Gunner has. And he can still get better. And I think that's encouraging.
On the side of the defense, very quick, and we'll have a lot of time this week to talk about this. Obviously, if you give up 40 whatever points, then you didn't have a great day necessarily. But I'm not that freaked out about this. I think it's really hard to replicate what Tennessee does. So therefore, the idea that someone's going to play Georgia the exact same way, I mean, try it if you want to. I mean, Tennessee this year is getting rid of the ball as quick as they ever have. I think Aguilar deserves some credit for that. This is Heupel's 5th time facing Kirby. They swing for the fences a lot. They've never really connected on big passing plays before. You know, it's dumb to say they were due, but maybe they were due to hit a few, and they did. Certainly at the beginning. I mean, by the way, you know, Brazel, the receiver, what do you have? 3 touchdowns, 170-something yards. That's a big game from him, of course. You know, but ultimately, you know, KJ still made a couple plays. Janelle made a couple of plays. Raylan Wilson was there to at least get the one big hit. In a game in which you're giving up a lot, you've still got to make every snap count. And Georgia did enough on enough snaps offensively for Tennessee to limit them and find a way to win the game. I don't know this suggests that Georgia's going to have a bad defense. I think it suggests that Tennessee's pretty hard to play against.
I think both can be true. I think you look at it and see that Tennessee, they've figured out how to maximize their offensive attack. And they've got an identity that challenges defenses, and really want to focus more on the Georgia side of things. There's a couple of assignment issues that they can clean up. But when you have 80-plus snaps on both sides of the ball and both offenses were able to move the ball, for Georgia's defense, I think there was times where we had players in the right position. We just didn't come away with plays. And I think you learn from that. Ellis Robinson, for first-time starter this season, his ceiling is as high as anyone out there. And there's times where just wasn't able to make plays on the ball, or the one where you almost hope if you're going to get beat, let's earn that pass interference and take the 15 rather than a touchdown. You learn from those. And that's the beauty of being a part of a long season and winning in the process. So as long as you recognize we didn't play perfect football, that's not why we won this game. We still have a lot to clean up. We can still get better in a lot of places, but we do that while we're winning. What a beautiful opportunity. It's when teams are saying, hey, we won, and don't recognize there's still a lot of ways that as a team we can improve. I think that's where you get caught and teams pass you. I don't see that from this Georgia team. I don't see it from this defense. I think they go back to work this week and recognize, man, we can still get better. And I think that's what this game against Tennessee proves is, boy, step up in talent from the Marshall and the Austin Peays of the world, a team that really was putting up a lot of points against everyone that they faced. And you can learn from that. And now it's a matter of, well, how do we clean up what's on our front porch? And so I think we've got the guys to do it, and the approach and the mentality that it takes to recognize we can still get better, and I'd much rather do it while you're winning.
I appreciate you giving us so much time today, Jon. Really valuable information. Really appreciate that. Fun to be talking about these things after a big Georgia win, and really intriguing to think about where this team might go from here with 2 weeks to get ready for Alabama. Thanks so much for it. Hope you have a great week. We'll look forward to talking to you soon here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window in Dorf, Georgia.
I appreciate the time, BA. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs indeed.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
You know, my preference would always be to sit in the stands or at least be in the stadium and hear the noise and be a part of the environment. I will say, and I'm not proud of this, but it is true, I have gotten a little bit used to the comfy confines of the press box, at least in one respect. That you got the TV, you can watch the replay on, get your internet in front of you, and I'm keeping up with stats. My reason for saying this is that in moments during this game, especially in the first quarter when Tennessee scores 21 points, and you're really forced to consider that the Tennessee offense was having success against Georgia in a way that it had not previously had in the Kirby Heupel era. The one thing that was bringing me some comfort, I had my laptop open the same way I have it open right now, and I'm watching the live stats. And, Tennessee finishes with 125 yards rushing. I guess there was that one, big run late in the fourth quarter that improves their rushing stats. But for a good portion of this game, Tennessee was well under 3 yards per carry. They were hovering right there around 50 whatever rushing yards. That Georgia had really limited the Tennessee run game. And that was the one thing in the midst of some tough times when, as I said, I was getting close to writing the concession speech that, maybe Tennessee's going to win this game. The fact that Georgia wasn't giving up yards on the ground, that's something. And if you've ever dieted, the one thing that people tell you is that anything that you do or do not eat counts. That, I always have a bad habit of if I blow up and eat something I'm not supposed to eat, well, now the week's ruined, so I might as well just eat whatever I want. And that's obviously the worst attitude in the world to have. I try not to be that way, but in the past, maybe sometimes I've thought that way. Football is the same way. It's like, okay, well, you gave up a 75-yard touchdown. Yeah, but don't give up the next thing on the next play. And if you do that enough, then you find a way to give your team a chance to win. And defensively, I think that's what Georgia did. They got some stuff to clean up, no doubt about it. And against teams, they're going to hold it a little longer. Georgia's got to get some pass pressure going at some point against Tennessee. That was very hard to do for the most part. You need to do some of that against Ty Simpson in a couple of weeks. But I'm not going to be too doom and gloom about the defense overall, even though there were clearly, some busts and some things you got to get better with. Some of that may just be what college football is in this day and age. Now, let's get ready to go cruise around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And one of the things I loved about our DawgNation invasion on Saturday is that so many people who were there, we had, what felt like a couple hundred people in the boat. So many people who were there were also people that we've gotten to know throughout the years on our DawgNation cruise. Some who have been with us every year, some who have been with us before, some who are hoping to come back. I love that. And I'm telling you, if you enjoy DawgNation Invasion, something we do for a couple of hours on a game day, you're going to love a DawgNation cruise when we go to the Bahamas and we stay for several days. And, for me, I just feel like this weekend's a perfect example of this. You run around so much, and I love my life. I wouldn't change anything about it. But you run around so much where you're just moving from place to place and doing thing to thing, and it feels like you never stay anywhere more than a couple of minutes, then it's just sort of on to the next, and that's just the way that it goes. But a cruise is different than that. You really are unplugged. You're on the water. You're away from your life on the land, and you get a chance to just live in that world for a little bit, and that's why I love sharing that with so many of our DawgNation cruisers. So if you could use a vacation, go ahead and plan for one next April with us on board the DawgNation cruise. Jessica Slater's a terrific travel advisor. She's standing by to help you with that here right now. You can give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can email her, jslater@dreamvacations.com, and you can be a part of our DawgNation cruise as we set sail on Utopia of the Seas in April. It's going to be a great experience. I hope to see you there. Okay, now, let's get ready to go cruise around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean right now. And if you don't mind, I just want to bounce through some of the games of note from this weekend. As I told you before, I did not watch much football this weekend, so I'm at a little bit of other than Georgia, Tennessee, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage here, but we'll give you some thoughts nonetheless. Alabama wins against Wisconsin. 38-14 is the final. I think the story here as it relates to Georgia is that Ryan Williams got going for Alabama in a way that he probably hasn't for a lot this season. Williams had taken some criticism for, I don't even know what. It's one of those things where I think that people were waiting for Ryan Williams to put his stamp on this season against Wisconsin on Saturday. I guess he did. Now, Wisconsin's one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, so this isn't necessarily a statement game from Alabama, but it is maybe an example of them figuring out their offense a little before facing Georgia. And, of course, you better believe that after the way last year's game ended, that's a wild game that did not go Georgia's way, but after the way that last year's game ended, you better believe that Georgia is looking to to have a better performance against Ryan Williams this year than it did a year ago. Because, I think that we saw Williams last year, and most of us as Georgia fans had him in the same category of Jeremiah Smith, who is unquestionably the best receiver in college football, and we would have Williams in a similar category. But post-Georgia, that's not really the season that Ryan Williams had. And I'm not here to tell you that he's not good or whatever else. I'm just saying that Williams did not have the kind of game against anybody else the same way that he did against Georgia. So I think that 2 weeks from now is an opportunity for Georgia to step up against Williams, especially with now the defense facing some questions about how many points they gave up, how many big passing plays they allowed. That's just going to be a storyline. Missouri's only playing Louisiana, but they dominated again. We told you that Missouri was better than the experts realized. That is one we got right. Here is one maybe all the experts look to have gotten wrong for right now. Texas only beats UTEP 27-10. More struggles, if you will, just 114 yards passing, 1 touchdown for Arch Manning. It's getting weird in Austin. It really is. It is getting weird in Austin. And I don't know where this is going, because I would have told you before the season began, even though I'm typically one that's skeptical of narratives, I told you I have major trust issues. I don't trust storylines. I don't trust a lot of things. I just am not a very trusting person. Maybe at one point in time I was, but boy, you look around, things change, and I'm nowhere near as trusting as I used to be. That's for me to deal with. That's my own personal issues. But in the case of the Arch Manning stuff, I kind of did think, well, if this many people think he's good, then he probably is. But so far, he ain't. And I just don't know what that means. You assume that improvement's coming at some point, but we're 25% of the way through the regular season. And I know week 1's on the road at the defending national champions, Ohio State, but that's not the level of competition that Texas has played the last 2 weeks. I'm assuming eventually he plays better, but this is a major story right now. And we always knew that whoever lost the Ohio State-Texas game would go into witness protection program, and Texas kind of has. So right now, there's less attention being paid to Texas just because they're not number 1 anymore. But this Arch Manning thing, at least for the moment, is real. You assume he's going to play better, but wow, that's weird. I told you going into the week I would have no part of the Arkansas-Ole Miss game. Thought it would be a fun game, but didn't want to pick a side in that. As it turns out, it probably was a fun game. Ole Miss wins 41-35. It seems like over my lifetime, Arkansas and Ole Miss play a lot of wild games. I guess this was another one. And what can you say about Florida? DJ Lagway. I mean, Lagway was supposed to be the thing they had going for them. Well, come to find out, they don't have anything going for them. Play Miami this upcoming Saturday. We'll see how that goes. Boy, people love Miami right now. My gosh, they love Miami. So we'll see how that goes. But this Florida thing, it just seems like the Billy Napier's done there. And we told you that was going to happen. We thought they got way too much praise for the start of the season. Did not make any sense. That's just weird. And Florida has already lost twice, and the real tough stretch of their schedule probably hasn't even started yet. I mean, that is crazy. Does Napier coach against Georgia? Does Napier become the next Florida coach fired after playing Georgia? I think it's all in play right now. Let me also go to the other side of this for a moment where, maybe we'll play this clip at some point down this week. I don't know. But, Brian Kelly had the weird moment press conference where he was asked about some offensive struggles, and he just went off on the spoiled nature of folks not being able to appreciate wins and things like that. I'm really conflicted on this because on the one hand, I do think that Kelly's a really awkward guy, and I think that awkwardness has hurt him as a coach. I do believe that's true. On the other hand, I think some of what Kelly says there feels correct to me in that, and look, people don't care about the inside baseball of media, but I do think there is something to what an appropriate first question of a press conference is, that the second, third, fourth, or 25th question can be whatever. I think the first question needs to feel like a first question, and maybe there's something to be said for criticism of the offense after the very first question when you did win an SEC game. That feels weird. Florida LSU is typically a big game. You can't act like the win doesn't count just because Florida didn't play very well. So from that standpoint, I do think that Kelly has a leg to stand on for being critical of the nature of that question in a post-game press conference. One of the things that I sometimes notice is that people do have a hard time being happy. And coaches have a right to say, does anything ever make you happy? It can't all just be avoiding misery. Losses are miserable. In the case of Brian Kelly, in a roundabout way, I think what he's trying to say is the sum total of this job cannot be simply trying to stay one step ahead of misery, because that creates, that's just no way to live. And so from that standpoint, I don't think that Kelly's completely wrong on that. Could be that I've been wrong about Texas A&M. I told you I just don't have a good vibe about them, but maybe I'm just too far away from College Station. They were probably lucky to beat Notre Dame. Missed kick factor into that game too. But either way, they do go on the road and beat Notre Dame. And I tell you this, for Notre Dame team, the one that Georgia saw in the Sugar Bowl, that was a nasty defense. That is not what they are anymore. They lost twice. They remain in the AP top 25 because they're Notre Dame. But, they've also played 2 Power 4 teams to begin the season too, so that's not nothing. But this is not the same level of defense, and therefore probably not the same level of Notre Dame. And I'll finish with this, and you just got to say it. Vanderbilt looks for real. 3-0, all 3 wins in excess of 20 points. They were helped in this game because Lenore Sellers gets injured. But to win back-to-back weeks, Lane Stadium and Williams-Brice Stadium, 2 historically speaking, incredibly tough road environments, and to do so in really impressive fashion, that's just a major statement. There were people who I would say are smarter than me that were talking a lot last week about how many seniors Vanderbilt has. This is a very veteran team, and they're playing like it right now. By the way, speaking of Virginia Tech, Brent Pry gets fired. We love coaching searches around here. That's a fun one. I would say that the names we're going to see on that list are going to be names that we recognize. And I'll just say this real quick, that because of the way in which recruiting works now, early signing period moves up, the transfer portal in that winter window is such a big deal. That means the coaching carousel is going to start sooner than it did before. So on Saturday, we had 2 September firings. We almost never saw that in the past. But the calendar is so accelerated now, you're going to have to do some of that, which means there are going to be some teams that probably have their regular season impacted by assistant coaches thinking about other jobs. That is just a very strong possibility. We've seen this before where so-and-so coach seems to have, I'll just say it out loud. For a while when Lane Kiffin thought he might get the Auburn job, it seemed like he got pretty disinterested in Ole Miss for a while. And Ole Miss fans, I think, felt the same way. This is going back a couple of years ago. We may see that with a handful of assistant coaches across the country. Some of that's going to be in the South who may think they have a chance to be for the Virginia Tech head coach, because if you get offered the Virginia Tech coaching job, that's a job you probably want. As bad as they've been, that's a job you probably want. And I'll also say this. UCLA is the most unserious football team. They fired Deshaun Foster. Probably was not a good hire to begin with. They're in the Big Ten for the sole purpose is if USC was going, they were going with them. That is all they are, just a parasite on the back of USC. And, this is the problem. People want college ball to be a national sport. And they want to, I've always said this, they would be happier with fewer fans if the fans were more spread out in more of the right places. And so, therefore, I think there's an intentional attempt sometimes to depress interest in the SEC as a hope of inflating interest other places. But the issue you always run into, these so-called other places, especially the Pacific time zone, the far west part of our country, other than Oregon, the football, so-called powers, the programs that should be good are just not serious. UCLA is just not serious about football. They're just not. They are, we predict this before the season, one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, probably the worst. And now they're back to a coaching search again here. And it's laughable that that's what Nico Iamaleava wanted to be a part of, stepping into that situation that's already imploded. The season's barely started. But this is a problem for college football. It thinks it has more marketing power with its media rights if it can be a true national sport, one that's a major player in all 4 time zones. But you just can't you just can't convince the people out west to take it seriously. And UCLA is a classic example of that, looking for another coach once again after their previous coach left to go be a coordinator. you ought to be embarrassed, and your embarrassment ought to be a source of motivation. We have no interest, or I should say no indication right now that is the case. Tough times there in Westwood at the moment. We'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. But back to happier subjects as we wrap up here. What a weekend for Georgia, and what a time to celebrate. What a great collections of golden shoes to help us do that here today. Let's show you the first one here. Our good friend Chelsea, who's been a part of our show and our audience for a very long time, she sent me this very funny picture of her wearing a T-shirt on Saturday saying, would not wear Tennessee orange for him. A shout out to the famous song from Megan Maroney. And Chelsea writes in to say, no amount of love is ever going to get me to wear that awful orange. Sorry. She says, I know DawgNation Daily agrees. Hashtag 9 straight. Chelsea, you better believe that's the case. Very funny shirt. Appreciate your loyalty to UGA. That is incredible stuff, Chelsea. A golden shoe going out to you for that. How about our next golden shoe here as well? Keith Finney shared this with me, and we've got to the point where memes are basically art now. Look at the collection of these faces, the missed kick, unhappy Tennessee fans. Keith writing in to say those faces of Rocky Top. Yeah, indeed. Listen, that's a work of art right there. That could be hung in a museum and as a representation of what Saturday was all about. A picture certainly says 1,000 words. Keith will give you a golden shoe for that. How about our next one here? James Bell writing in to say, good morning. He's made his own meme here, or somebody's made it anyway, of Benjamin Watson drinking the Georgia mug that says Volunteers. You got the orange juice down there at the bottom. Very good stuff from James. We'll give a golden shoe there for that very clever meme. Yeah, those Volunteers taste pretty sweet right now. They say it's luck. We say it's never been better. Good stuff from James. And then finally, not to toot my own horn here, but I showed a picture of myself on Saturday with the 9 fingers in the air. Meriwether Dog wrote in to say, that picture is golden shoe worthy. And so, Bodog, I'll take you up on that, and I will give you a golden shoe for acknowledging me as perhaps a golden shoe. I love that too. Certainly the celebration in Neyland was going on as long as they let us do it there on Saturday. Great stuff indeed on all that. How about the lousy, stinking Gators? We'll give you a Gator Hater updater. We'll remind you that it's been 1,773 days since Florida's beaten Georgia. And just for fun, just for today, our producer, Jay Black, lets us know. Get this. I feel like Jerry Lewis. How about 3,272 days? That's how long it's been since Tennessee has beaten Georgia. 3,272 days. What a time to be a Georgia fan. We are thrilled to talk to you about it. We'll see you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised. The price is promised. Randy Hall asking about the Virginia Tech replacement. Yeah, I mean, I think you can think about some usual suspects here. I think the Buster Faulkner ought to get a look there. I think that Faulkner's been fairly close to taking jobs before. Honestly, I mean, I hate to see him leave. Virginia Tech, I think, could do worse than Todd Hartley. I'd love to see Todd Hartley get that job. We've seen, Sam Pittman as a position coach go to Arkansas. He's more than held his own. I could see a guy like Hartley doing a good job there. I think that Schumann should be considered for that job. Don't want to lose either of those guys, but I'd also love to see him become head coaches. For sure. Matt Rukavine writes in to say, I'm not going to lie. Boy, comments are coming fast. After the Gunner fumble, I left the room and went outside so the kids wouldn't hear me yell. Then the phone started blowing up. I stayed absolutely put until the post-game show. Yeah, sometimes that's the way it goes. So you get into a position. I am not a superstitious person. I'm not even, to use the old joke, a little stitious. But every now and then you do find yourself thinking, boy, it worked pretty good when I was standing here. Maybe I should keep on standing there. I think, I don't believe in superstition at all. But every now and then you just can't help but fall prey to it, I guess. Scott Harris says, it took 3 miracles for us to even have a chance to win that game. The 4th and 6, the 2-point conversion, and the missed field goal. Can't believe they all happened. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It was miracle after miracle after miracle. Now, the one thing I'm going to tell you is that 2-point conversion play, I don't believe that's a miracle. I believe that Georgia knew it had that in its back pocket. You could tell by that play design. You get Branch on that little, It almost reminds me of that one day we made a big deal after the first spring scrimmage or one of the practices where they showed that video of Branch, and he was working basically against a grad assistant, just essentially against air, but he caught it and cut on a dime. That's just the quickness that he has, and I think Georgia knew it had that one. You're right. Multiple miracles were required to win this game. That 2-point play, I believe they knew that was going to work. I believe they knew it was going to work. Savannah Bryan. So Brian's a great commenter because I had been thinking something along this line where it feels like Georgia has done a lot of this lately, and he chronicles it well here by saying, let me get this. Have you ever seen a team have three overtime games in a 6-game stretch and be 3-0 in those games? Mental toughness and culture. It's true. So if you go back to final 3 games of last year, clean old-fashioned hate, SEC, 2 of the final 3 games were overtime. And now in the first 3 games of this year, it's also an overtime win. In very different fashion, Georgia wins all 3 games. That's really something. It's really something. And people will say, your luck's going to run out. And maybe it will. I'm just glad it didn't run out on Saturday. I'm just glad that it didn't run out on Saturday. Hey, that's going to catch up with you at some point in time. Okay, that's fine. But it didn't catch up with me on Saturday, and that's all that matters to me right now. That's a great comment, Brian. Great comment. Let's get some more. Also, let me go to YouTube, actually. Delmar Lane Reloaded says, I'm worried about Tech. I know what you're saying, and we'll talk about that. But let me encourage you on this. I'm not trying to be your dad. I'm not trying. Y'all are free to do what you want. I'm not the internet police. I would encourage you not to be worried about anything today. Not like tomorrow will take care of itself. I would encourage you not to be worried about anything. Does it seem like right now that there's a very good chance that Georgia plays Georgia Tech in a neutral site game to conclude the season in a top 25 matchup? Seems like that's going to be the case. And if that is true, be fun. And Georgia's had to fight like mad to beat Tech. Certainly last year, to a certain extent, even in 2023, that was the case. I get the point you're making. Like I said, I'm not trying to be the internet police, and I'm not trying to be your dad. But I'm just telling you right now, I wouldn't be worried about anything today. I wouldn't be worried about the Georgia offensive line. I wouldn't be worried about the cornerback busts. I wouldn't be worried about anything. Man, it is – you just don't get this much in life. To have your team win what is unquestionably considered the game of the weekend and will go on to be, I believe, one of the games of the year. You just don't get that a lot in life. And look, we also do this stuff every day, and we've already done this now for almost an hour and a half today. We talk about everything. And honestly, Brent Key deserves some credit for building Tech into something. He's doing what Tech should have been doing a long time ago. It's frankly weird that, it took Brent to convince them to take football seriously. It's weird, but now they are. So yeah, could be a big game for Georgia among many other big games. And like any game you play, certainly no guarantee Georgia's going to win it. They were, had to fight like crazy to win it a year ago. But I'm telling you right now, there could be a meteor heading towards Earth, and I wouldn't be worried at this particular moment right now because I want to live in the moment and enjoy all of this. Jerry Dog fan talking about the impact of transfers. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Tennessee had its share, but boy, I tell you what, McCray touchdowns, London Humphreys touchdown, Zachariah Branch. And, I'm ready for Noah Thomas to break out and get more opportunities, things like that. But honestly, when you look at pass interference, which is not as big a penalty in college as it is in the NFL, but it was still big for Georgia on Saturday, a couple of the holds, these were on plays in which Noah Thomas was going to be targeted. So, without getting his name in the stat sheet, really, Thomas came up big on that. Brian Buttery bringing up the Redcoat ban. So we have done an investigation on this, because that's what we do. We're very, very serious newsmen here. We have done an investigation. What is being described on the internet, y'all have to be a fact checker. I'm gonna do some fact checking. I'll do some fact checking. I love the fact checkers. Fact check on this. I don't believe the Redcoat Band actually played Rocky Top. And I know you've seen the video where they did, but this is where, I get to be the newsman, do a little fact checking. So Tennessee pipes the band through speakers across the stadium, because here's a weird thing. Now, I'm no expert on, okay, but this is like a real show. Do y'all ever stop and just like amazed that we sometimes function like a real show? So here I am talking about something, and now we're actually seeing it on the screen. That's what a show would do, and we're doing the things that a show would do. That's amazing to me. Do you mind showing it one more time? Because if we can, because the video got shared. The Redcoat Band is playing. It was a smaller pep band. And listen, I'm old enough to remember they took the whole band to Neyland. That doesn't happen anywhere anymore other than Florida, I don't think. But the point is the band is playing. People thought it was playing. And we can take that down now. Maybe we tried to play it one too many times. People thought the band may be playing Rocky Top because as the Redcoat is playing, you could hear Rocky Top. But I'm no sonic expert, but what I believe is going on there is the smaller UGA pep band was almost impossible to hear if you were a ways away from it. But the speakers of the Pride of the Southland playing Rocky Top made it seem as if the Redcoats were playing Rocky Top. This wasn't fake news or, AI slop or anything like that. It was just a case of mistaken. It's not misinformation, or what's the new thing? Malinformation. It's nothing like that. It's just an error, and we exist to correct errors. So Tennille says there is a meteor coming. Let me tell you something, Tennille. If that's true, I don't want to know. Can I just be happy? You say it's coming in December. Can we get through Christmas? I'd love to have another Christmas. That'd be awesome. A good football season, get through Christmas. I don't even need the college football playoff. Just let me see Georgia play its SEC games. Maybe go back to Atlanta again. If the meteor's coming, let me just enjoy it. Y'all don't tell me. Patrick Ford says you better believe the secondary is going to get cussed into shape by the time the Tide rolls in. Yeah, let me tell you something. The old school coach, you picture like Vince Dooley or Bear Bryant, they're coaching up there in their tower. It almost looks like, people say the ivory tower. The old Vince Dooley coaching tower looked like an ivory tower, at least to my young eyes. I'm not old enough to know Bear Bryant as a coach, but you see the picture of him and he's literally looking down on creation. Kirby Smart doesn't have a tower. Kirby Smart's not up in the sky looking down on practice. Kirby Smart is putting his hands on people. He's moving people where he wants them to go. He's coaching. And, yeah, you better believe if anybody's going to get involved in that secondary, it's going to be him. But once again, you got to be better. I'm not saying you don't. But I don't know, man. If you swing for the fences 1,000 times, you're going to give up a couple. Georgia hadn't given up any pass plays to Tennessee in 4 years. We thought this game was likely to be closer. If it was going to be closer, Tennessee was going to have to get something in the passing game in order for that to be true. And that's basically what worked out. Oh, so how about this? Jonathan Aaron says he was sitting right there by the Branch 2-point play in row 7. He says, I was the one guy in the red and the sea of white. That's always fun if you see yourself on camera in a situation like that. That's always fun. By the way, Johnny Surfdog mentioning the 5-pack of interceptions from DJ Lagway. Johnny, that's crazy. What a rough day for him. Brandon Griffin said they're going to be moonball drills all this week. Yeah, maybe that's the case, and I guess that's a pretty good description for what some of those were. By the way, my son, every now and then he'll have one of those. You ever play with one of those? They call them the moonball thing, where you bounce that thing, it bounces so high. It's not like the old Super Ball. This one's got a little bit of a different texture to it. It's like a moon ball. That thing's crazy. But yes, that's what some of that was. And honestly, that's what the Ryan Williams touchdown last year kind of felt like, didn't it? All right, let's see what else. Tennille says it's smaller pet band. Yeah, I mean, Georgia just doesn't take much of a band on the road anymore. Some games, the far games, I don't even think they go to at all. That's just a thing that exists now. Star Wars Dog says, who do y'all see as playing in Atlanta? Now, listen, I'm as happy as can be today, but it's not the happiness of, you better bring on everybody because we're going back to Atlanta. We're going to repeat as SEC champions. I'm as happy as anybody could be today, but that happiness, you'll notice, is not leading to a bunch of grand predictions of, in Alabama, you're next, and Texas, we're going to knock you out, and Ole Miss, you don't know what's coming for you. If you'll notice, it's, I'm happy we won this one. We'll worry about the next one when the next one gets here. And the point that the reason why I say that is because the point that I was thinking about before the show this morning is, right now the SEC is as deep as it's ever been, as deep as it's ever been. Now, on the one hand, you may say, well, that means that the schedule, who you play week to week, is going to be tougher than ever. That's probably true. But I also mean something else when I say that too. What I also mean when I say that is y'all, remember, we went into the final weekend, the second to the last weekend of the regular season last year, thinking that Georgia had almost no chance of playing for the SEC title. And by the time that Saturday came to an end, Georgia had essentially clinched playing for the SEC title. The one big problem that you have right now, in other words, is that the SEC's tiebreaker scenarios are a little bit nonsensical. And you've got a situation where very similar teams are grouped together, and what puts one team in over another is not necessarily based on, at least as I would describe it, true competitive differences. It's more just a little bit of a randomness. And so just keep in mind that if you want to pre-worry about something we'll talk about later on, I foresee a situation in our future, and by our, I mean DawgNation collectively. I see a situation in our future where we're frustrated about SEC tiebreakers. Because here's why this matters. I hate to use a phrase like politically correct because it's a loaded phrase, and I don't mean it in a loaded way. But I think that the committee last year made the somewhat politically correct decision to say we're not going to keep a team out of the playoff for losing a conference title game. And so therefore, all of the conference title losers got granted free trips to the playoff. But what that doesn't consider is what causes one team to play for the title and another team to miss out because of a tiebreaker is essentially just some sort of made-up mumbo-jumbo. You know, Texas played last year in the SEC championship almost solely because it played a much easier schedule than other SEC teams did. So if you want to pre-worry about something we'll be mad about in a few weeks, my prediction is there is a chance that we're a little bit upset about SEC tiebreakers at some point, because the SEC championship game ticket was a free trip to the playoff a year ago, and it was mostly determined by tiebreakers that were essentially a random collection of things. Joseph Kennedy says LSU must have struggled on offense. They got 5 interceptions, only 20 points. Yeah, I don't dispute that they did struggle, but Brian Kelly, I think, is right to say, look, you know, can we just enjoy a win for 5 seconds? As I said during the show, people don't care about media stuff, but I do think there is something to an appropriate first question for the press conference. If you're going to ask the first question, you got to ask the right question, I guess. I do think there's something to that. Although I realize none of y'all care about that at all. And you're probably right not to. Billy Wright says Branch is electric. He feels like a Percy Harvin type of player. Yeah, Billy, I don't love having to make that comparison, but it's kind of true. And I tell you who else he reminds me of, and I hate it. It's the same dadgum team. It's a little Kadarius Toney like for me too, because I like it when football is simple. And if you watch the way that Branch moved on the 2-point, Toney used to do some of that too, where there's just no defense for this. If you're as quick as he is, if you go in motion and then cut back the other way, I'm sorry, God gave Zachariah Branch something. It's like the Liam Neeson thing, a particular set of skills that other people just don't have. And I don't care if you even know that it's coming. That little, I mean, you're not going to stay with him on that. You're not going to do it. It's just it's a really hard move. And one of the things I've gotten interested in, last couple of years is stuff related to like 2-point plays, things like that, because it's hard to jam it in from the 2-point conversion line. It's just hard. Small field, defense knows what's coming. I used to think just run a regular play. I always felt like teams got a little too cute with 2-point conversion plays. Just run a regular play. Run a play that works. But what you realize is, well, no. It's just way easier for a defense to defend you down there on a really short field. So you got to run something kind of cute on that. And I would say that was a pretty cute one from Georgia. Let's see what else. Brandon Griffin says, I will never stop watching a game again. I learned my lesson when I walked out of the sports bar during the Ohio State game and turned off my phone. We'll never do that again. Take the pain and joy. Brandon, I don't know how to pin a clip or a quote, but if I could, I'd pin yours. Because I'm telling you right now, that's not just football talk. I'm telling you right now, and I don't mean to sound like a blowhard. Golly, I don't mean to. But that is life advice. Y'all, there is no joy to be found in mitigating the pain of a defeat. We should all just be honest. We should just all be honest. If you're a true Georgia fan, and almost anybody watching right now would be, if you're a true Georgia fan, the wins make you happy, the losses make you sad. People are afraid to admit when they're sad. You don't have to be scared of being sad. You don't have to be scared of being sad. People will use a different word to describe what's just basic run-of-the-mill sadness. You don't have to be afraid of being sad in any situation. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad. And what people do is they replace sadness with anger, or, like what he's describing is, if you ever play video games, he's rage quitting in real life. But you can't actually rage quit real life. If you're playing your son in NCAA EA Sports, you can rage quit that if you want to, and I probably have. Certainly when I was younger, I did. But in real life, as was it Brandon? Yeah. In real life, as Brandon said, you can't rage quit in real life. You can't. You can't. Nothing good ever comes from it. If Georgia's going to lose, stand there and take the loss. I'm telling you right now, I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 20 or 70. Stand there and take it. You'll be a better man for it. You really, really will. You'll be a better man for it. And I'm sure you'll be a better woman too, but I don't know what it's like to be a woman. You'll be a better man for it if you stand there and take it. I just think that's great advice, Brandon. I'm glad you said what you said. Now, I'll tell you this too. That doesn't mean if Georgia's about to lose a game, you ever have the feeling when you're a kid where like, I don't want to go to school tomorrow? I get the I don't want to go to school tomorrow type scaries of like, I don't want to go do this post-game show and get yelled at because it always happens, and I hate it. It's terrible. Thankfully, I don't have to do that a lot. It's one of the reasons why I run my mouth so much is because I don't have to do a lot of hard shows. Don't want to have to do the, I do get that, gosh, I don't want to just go to school today feeling, but you still show up for it. You still stand there and take it. Billy Wright writes in to say, I got Gators in the brain with the comparison. My daughter's playing the Gator Ball travel softball tournament in Gainesville. She says, lifelong dog, and it's tough for me, but yeah, Billy, I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to do a couple more comments, and we got to get out of here. Let's see what else. Silver Bridges said instead he stood there and watched Tennessee take the loss. But that's also the point. And I guess I didn't finish the point. I'm glad you said it, Silver Bridges. Because here's the thing. If you're convinced Georgia's going to lose, sometimes when you stand there and just let it happen, just let the misery wash all over you, every now and then it just goes a different way. And here's the thing. When I think back to the best moments of Georgia football in these last few years, it's oftentimes the moment before the moment that ends up being more memorable. You know, if you stay all the way to the end of Ohio State, you saw the missed kick. If you stay all the way to the end of Tennessee, you saw Josh McCray. But what about the moments prior to that? You know, what about the Branch 2-point? What about the London Humphreys touchdown? You know, what about the Arian Smith touchdown against Ohio State? The most memorable moment from that game for me was not the moment in which Georgia, you know, took the lead or whatever else. It's the Smith touchdown that made me think, golly, Georgia may be in this game still. Or that, and we've talked about it with Rodrigo before, the end of the half against Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl, where you're like, goodness gracious, Georgia may still be in this thing. It's the, you know, when you stick around for the whole thing, it's the origin story of the comeback of, you know, all of a sudden things aren't quite as bad as they used to be. Maybe if you do one more thing and then a thing after that, maybe the game starts to feel a little different. That's the fun of the whole deal. By the way, good to see Eugene Marine back in here today, fresh off his trip to Tennessee. Doggy asked about Zion Branch. Yeah, I don't know that Zion's gotten in a ton yet, but I or at least in you know the major part of the game. But I do still think that competition at safety is probably still open. I do. DT says a rub route inside the 5 is nearly impossible to defend. Yeah, that's one of the defensive coaches want a penalty on that. Now, not the Branch thing. That wasn't but it's the old thing about, you know, offensive coaches call it a rub route. Defensive coaches call it a pick play. That's not what Branch did. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying just in general, you're right. A truly well-executed rub route is virtually impossible. The spread stuff of these days, you know, you see a lot of that. The way in which receivers play off of each other is terrific. And the defensive coach's strategy on those, typically speaking, is to ask for a flag because they don't like what they call the pick play. Tim Carter gives you go Dawg Stincomb. All right, final YouTube comments, then we're gone for today. Jonathan Aaron says, I had Tennessee fans when they were up 21-7 say they will not think bad of me if I leave early. Yeah, boy, I mean, look, the Tennessee fans that I've met, with all due respect, don't have a great theory of mind in that they don't conceptualize the future. And I mean that with all due respect. You know, God loves them, but let's be honest. The idea that Georgia can't come back from a 2-touchdown deficit and the idea that somehow Tennessee is going to score 90 points because they happen to score a couple in the first quarter, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. You know, you just got to be careful what you say. You got to be careful what you say. All right, let's see what else. Bo Molinari, by the way, he says biggest win for A&M in 10 years. And Bo, I give you credit for it. I know you're a big Aggie fan. I'm glad you check in with us. I didn't see it coming, so good job by them. Sounds like it was a pretty wild game. I really didn't see any of it. I didn't watch any football this weekend other than our game. But that's a big win. You're right. It's a big one. It's a big one. And I do think Elko's a good coach. Maybe they can build on that. You know, I had said I didn't quite know what the scenario was in College Station. Thought the vibes were weird. But maybe the vibes are better now. Or maybe I was just wrong the whole time because perhaps I was. Army Dog, this is a good point by Army Dog. 0 false starts by Georgia. You go on the road, hostile environment, 0 false starts. That's a great point, Army. That is a great point. Jeremy Harbin says Tennessee fans were so loud, but they got so quiet after the half while they were running it down their throats, and they're still the lead. Yeah, hey, and we'll finish with this. All of that, great points. As I said during the show, I don't like giving credit, but I'm telling you right now, the win feels big because your opponent makes the game feel big. Tennessee makes game days feel big. They do. Tennessee makes game days feel big, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Logistically, the stadium's a nightmare to get in and out of. I still don't think I understand how you do it. I don't think the fans really know. I heard horror stories of Tennessee fans, like people who go to the stadium every week, taking multiple hours, at least more than an hour, to go through the ticket line to get to their seats. It is not a structural marvel in terms of egress. It is not a logistical success story, but it is quite an edifice. It is quite a place for a football game, and they made game day feel big. But also, who was it that said this? I'm sorry. Who said all this? Now I don't. We've had comments coming so fast I can't keep up with them. Oh yeah, Jeremy Harbin. But they also, I felt like, rode the roller coaster of emotions. And the most deflating moment for me after Georgia, and we'll talk about it this week, I promise we will. When Georgia tone set that drive to begin the second half, I thought that Tennessee would hit the turf, hit the canvas, and it was going to be over. Because those fans, the air got taken out of that stadium. Then they got back into it after the next Brazzle touchdown, and now I'm reeling again. But when that game was over, I've never heard quiet like that. That's the quietest quiet I have ever heard. They could not believe they lost that game. Quietest quiet I have ever heard. They could not believe they lost that game. So yeah, all of that was very real. Okay, we're going to go. We'll tell you. Well, let me just say that. We're going to go for now. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for being here as part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Please do me a favor and check out R.S. Andrews online, rsandrews.com. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. Going to be hot this week. Get your AC tuned up. R.S. Andrews can show you how. New life, old unit. Boy, that sounds like a great way to save some money. R.S. Andrews will help you with that. So find them online, rsandrews.com. Have a great day. Back tomorrow, DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. And then tomorrow, we'll start getting into more of the, okay, where does Georgia go from here? Because let me tell you right now, that's a juicy conversation. So we'll get into that tomorrow. Glad to have you with us for DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll see you then, everybody.